Autumn chased the leaves down the road and the ubiquitous passers-by didn't stop for a second. Carolyn sat on a bench in a shabby bus stop. This town is going to finish me off. A girl. 15 years old. And she's got more problems than any adult could handle. Teachers don't appreciate her, parents don't pay attention, they have their own, adult, real problems. In fact, she's all alone in the world. Girlfriends. Yes, there was one, Lillian. Since 3rd grade, they were closer than sisters, like sisters. Soul to soul. Until this new kid came into the class. He was hell bent on transferring to their school. Noah was blonde and skinny. He was ordinary. There was nothing about him, nothing but his dimples on his cheeks, his charming smile. Noah was in a parallel class and Carolyn only knew him because their families were friends. His and her mothers had been friends once. His family moved away and they didn't talk to each other for a long time. And then they came back, communication resumed and they started visiting each other. Carolyn liked Noah immediately. She invited him to go for a walk in the evening. She also took Lillian for company. She honestly told her that she liked him. But her friendship could not stand his beautiful smile. Lillian also had a crush on him. She fought herself, kept to herself, forbade herself to look at the guy. But she couldn't stand it. Cool night last Wednesday changed everything. Carolyn was getting ready, putting on her makeup and picking out clothes. And Noah danced with Lillian all night. They disappeared into each other. Everyone could see that they forgot where they were, they did not look away from each other. Carolyn smiled proudly, joking with everyone. She left the evening a little early, walked past the happy couple. She came home, quietly closed the door behind her. She kissed her mother on the cheek. Her daddy was on shift and younger brother was watching cartoons. She went into her room, covered herself with pillows, and cried all night. But Carolyn didn't want anyone to hear. Because no one's sympathy, much less pity, could help her. No one could. An honest conversation between friends took place. And it was very short. Lillian approached her the next day. "Carolyn, I want to apologize. Noah liked me, he asked me out yesterday. I know you liked him. But that's the way it happened. The heart wants what the heart wants." Carolyn looked at her with the eyes of a battered dog. "I want you to die." Carolyn said this and saw that Lillian changed her face. She wasn't expecting it. Carolyn stood up and walked past. She made it clear that their friendship was dead yesterday at the party. And her funeral took place at night as Carolyn poured tears into her pillow. Lillian was sad, but she never came near her again. Carolyn hoped that her friend would leave town after all. Lillian's parents had died a long time ago. She lived with her grandmother. She had recently been admitted to a hospice. Now her fate was being decided by the guardianship service. She could have been taken by relatives who lived in another city. A couple of days ago her friends were afraid they would separate and Carolyn was ready to beg her parents for custody of her friend, but today she hoped that Lillian would disappear forever. Girlfriends don't do that. Never. No way. No, she wouldn't do that to her. After a week of silence and loneliness, Carolyn received bad news. Her beloved grandfather had died. The one who had pampered her and adored her as her only granddaughter. Carolyn was so upset by this event that she even talked to Lillian by chance. Lillian came up herself. "Did something happen to you? You're mad at me, and for good reason. But I'm always there for you." "Grandfather died yesterday," said Carolyn. Lena took her friend's hand. "I feel sorry. And the foster care people came to me. I'm probably going to leave. My relatives have agreed to take me in. So I won't be a nuisance to you." She would have felt sorry for her friend, but she couldn't. Somewhere out there is Noah, whom she still loves. But she'll never be with him. Because of this person. Let her go. The funeral went quickly. It was hectic. It was awful. Carolyn wanted to call Lillian. But she couldn't. She deleted it from the phone, but what was the use? She knew the numbers by heart. After the funeral, Carolyn stayed at her grandfather's house to sort out his things. The house had to be prepared for sale. Her father was away, he had to work. But her mother managed to get some time off and stayed. Still, her father died. Carolyn wasn't close to her mother. "What happened with you and Lillian? Why did she stop coming by? Did you quarrel?" she asked, casually. "Wow, she's interested in me like a real mother," thought Carolyn, hurt that her mother didn't pay enough attention to her. Everything went to her younger brother. That's how she felt. "We quarreled. And we won't be friends anymore," she answered dryly. "Is it because of the boy?" Mom smiled as she sorted through her grandfather's clothes. "What difference does it make? What she did was vile. I won't forgive that. It's a familiar situation. I also used to be friends with Lillian's mother. Rachel, her mother, was the prettiest girl in my class. And we liked the same boy. I liked him first, he saw me off for a month, and then he went off with her. Rachel beat me to it. I was so mad at her. And at him. And then I met your father. As fate would have it, they broke up, Rachel married another man, and Lillian kept her mother's maiden name. And then they had a car accident. Well, you know. That was fate. Carolyn hated Lillian even more. Turns out her mother had stolen the boyfriend from Carolyn's mother, and now Lillian herself had stolen Noah. What kind of people are they? How could they do that? Does friendship mean nothing to them? That same evening Carolyn went through her grandfather's things. There was a letter in an old box. It was written in her grandfather's beautiful handwriting, and it was addressed to Zoe, Carolyn's mother. An ethical dilemma. Should she read it or not? Maybe it was nothing at all or will. It's hardly his dying message. After all. They were not strangers. Carolyn opened the letter. Zoe, my dear daughter. If you found this letter in my things, it means that I am gone. I'm writing it to you now because I don't know how long I have left. The doctors say I'll live a few more years. Maybe more if I quit smoking and drinking. But what kind of life would that be? You know me, I don't abuse much, but I'm not going to give up the last pleasures of life either. They also prescribed me a diet. How can I do without fried fish? Carolyn smiled, and 2 tears rolled down her cheeks. Grandpa adored fried fish, caught it with a fishing rod, and could disappear for hours on the river. Daughter, I wish you wouldn't grieve for me. I know there will come a time when you will miss me. But you must remember that we are not all here forever. There was a time when we were gone, and there will be a time when we will all be gone. And I'm sure that life has no end and we will meet again someday. Carolyn smiled through her tears. Grandfather was a wise man. I would also like to tell you a secret that I've kept for years. Your first daughter, the one you gave birth to when you were 17, actually survived and lived with her father. Yes. Your mother told you she didn't die, but she actually took her to Brian and Rachel. And they took pity. You don't know this, but Rachel was barren. And she was raising your baby. I'm sorry we didn't tell you that we lied. Your mother thought it would be better that you'd meet a good man and you'd have a real thing, and that's how it turned out. And he wouldn't take you with a baby, your mother thought. They named their daughter Lillian, and now she lives with her grandmother, Rachel's mother. I can't take this secret with me to my grave. There were a few more lines, but Carolyn couldn't see them from the tears. Wow. Lillian is her sister, sister. She's 11 months older. It all makes sense. That traitor is her sister. Maybe that's why they were so friendly. Bloodline. Carolyn got up and was about to carry the letter to her mother, but she stopped. Now she's going to find out, take custody of Lillian, bring her to our house. And they'll forget all about me. Lillian will bring Noah home, and they'll get married, and all my family will be at their wedding. She'll take her place in my parents' hearts, and I'll be at the bottom of the list. I'm not popular as it is. She took the letter and tucked it in her pocket. All day long Carolyn weighed the pros and cons. She knew she had no right to hide her grandfather's letter. But she did not decide to show it to her mother because of her fears. She hated Lillian, and she could not imagine her living in her house. Probably not even in her room. Carolyn stayed up most of the night. Sleep came toward dawn, but at 7 o'clock her mother woke her up. Carolyn, we have to hurry. The car will pick us up in an hour. We'll go into town tonight. We got a call from work yesterday. We have to go back. Carolyn got up in bed. She had a piece of paper clutched in her hand. What have you got there? Her mother asked when she saw it. At this point it was possible to lie. To say that it was for studying. That it was a letter to Santa Claus. Anything. But Carolyn remembered her grandfather's face. He would have judged her if she had done that to his letter. Not only had she stuck her nose in it, but she wanted to hide it. It's a letter from grandfather. It's for you. I want to talk about it. But first, read it. That morning, Carolyn and her mother didn't go anywhere. They talked for many hours. Carolyn learned the whole story from the beginning. Carolyn's mother, Zoe, and Brian had dated when they were young, but Zoe's parents were against it. He was an unenviable groom. He drank and smoked and was a troublemaker. And Zoe fell hard in love with him. He dumped her for another girl, her friend. So it happened, they quarreled, and Rachel was there at the right time. And she and Brian got involved. And Zoe was pregnant with his child. But she kept quiet until the last moment. Her parents would have forced her to have an abortion if they knew in advance. So they didn't find out until the 5th month. It was a scandal. Zoe's father was silent and her mother was tearing up and tearing down. I'll go to his family, let him marry you, said Zoe's mother. Don't go. You'll disgrace our daughter. Let her give birth quietly and we'll say we adopted someone else's child. We'll save her honor, said Carolyn's grandfather. But her mother came up with another plan. She told her daughter that the baby did not survive, it was a difficult birth, a home birth. And she took the baby to her birth father. He took him in. He and Rachel started living together, apart from their parents. Brian was working, Rachel was going to enroll. They began to bring up the baby as their own. They named their daughter Lillian. They were not married, and Rachel gave the girl her last name. A year later, Brian left Rachel. She married someone else very quickly. And just as quickly they got into an accident. The child was left with her grandmother. She dragged her to the last minute until she fell ill, first the hospital, then the hospice. Grandma became very weak. Lillian waited for her return, but the doctors said it wasn't worth the wait. Grandma did not have long to live. Some of the neighbors called child welfare, they wanted to take Lillian right away, but left her in the care of her grandmother's sister. She lived in the same house, in the same entranceway. The old lady was not trusted with custody, and they found other relatives. Just at that time the issue of new custody was being resolved, the documents were being drawn up. Lillian was allowed to live under the care of her grandmother's sister here and finished the quarter at her school. Carolyn and her mother knocked on the door where Lillian lived. She opened it. The house was clean, tidy, and smelled like food. Lillian did everything around the house by herself. The story Carolyn's mother told made Lillian cry. Carolyn cried, too, with joy for her friend. Still, she loved her, no matter what. Lillian was taken away the same day, now sharing a room with Carolyn. Carolyn asked an awkward question only in the evening, when the girls had already turned out the lights. Are you and Noah serious, she asked. We don't have anything with him. And we're not going to. I realized that I was mean to you. I stopped talking to him a long time ago. Carolyn smiled. It got easier. If you love him, and he loves you, I understand. I'll get used to it. I've been selfish too. You're more important to me. You're my younger sister. And sisters don't do that, Lillian replied. Lillian was officially adopted by Carolyn's parents. The girls never really quarreled again, over little things, yes, but over boyfriends, no, that never happened. Carolyn had found the sister she had missed, and she no longer felt lonely.